Warning: the following video contains personal opinions and may contain potential bias. Anyone sensitive to someone else's opinion may want to turn away now. But thanks for watching anyways. Fan-made Pokemon have pretty much always existed since the very beginning, oftentimes out of personal desire to see a particular species of animal, or a certain object, exist as, well, a Pokemon. And in the lead up to the release of each generation, we always have those moments of excitement or disappointment when we get the reveals of brand new Pokemon and we see finally a creature we've always wanted to exist come out as a Pokemon, or disappointment when it doesn't happen, or disappointment when you do get what you want and it turns out it kind of sucks. But with all of that said, today we're not talking about fan-made Pokemon designs, but 10 things that I personally would love to see one day eventually become a Pokemon. And they are things. Most of them will be animals, but some of them will be objects. Because as much as we can make fun of a living sword, ice cream, or a pile of trash, they all serve their own purposes within the world building, and Game Freak often does a good job at justifying their own existences. For most part. Now it is worth noting straight up that I'm not going to be actually illustrating any of these designs, because honestly speaking, as much as I criticize fan-made Pokemon designs, I myself don't feel like I'm properly equipped to design a Pokemon. I get certain visual aesthetics that go into making a Pokemon, but I cannot begin to try and tackle the task of designing them myself. That said, I will pitch ideas I have for some of these Pokemon, including their typings. So with all of that said, welcome everyone to the Silver League's top 10 things that I wish were Pokemon. Number 10. A peacock. Now the peacock is sitting at the bottom of the list simply because, well, it's not my favorite bird of all time, but just look at this thing when its feathers are furled out. The design illustrates itself, it's just begging to be made into a Pokemon. In particular, it could be a flying psychic type. Now I know we already have a Pokemon like that in the form of Xatu, and while Xatu has kind of an interesting origin to it, it's not nearly as cool as this. The feathers already look like eyeballs, which ties into the whole psychic theming, and it could potentially have the ability to intimidate, and despite how a peacock looks, it can actually fly, as shown here. So it would count as a proper flying type, it would look lovely, it could have potentially interesting abilities, the typing isn't anything new, but hey, we'll be using it a lot more than Xatu, maybe, depending on the stats. I mean, it is a flying type, nothing against flying types, but it'll always be at the hindrance of Stealth Rocks. But all of that said, I think the design is just too good to pass up. Nature can be an amazing thing, and peacocks are just one example of how cool nature can be sometimes, and that's the thing I love about Pokemon. It takes a real-life design and enhances it into a cool or cute, lovable creature that we could end up learning about. And I think there's a lot of interesting ideas they could get from the peacock, besides its admittedly silly name. Number 9. A hammerhead shark. So despite the many water-type Pokemon we have, really all we have is Sharpedo, and that's just a shark's head. And there lies the potential worry if they did a hammerhead shark Pokemon. What would they do? Would they carry on tradition and make a hammerhead shark Pokemon literally just, well, a swimming hammerhead? Like literally just a hammer with eyeballs that's just swimming around? Or do we get something that's a bit more traditional of a shark? I don't know what more you could really do to a shark's design to make it Pokemonified, or at least more visually interesting beyond just being what it is. I mean, we've had Pokemon like Dugong, which are pretty much just straight up the animal, with barely any kind of Pokemonifying going on to just make it, you know, an anime creature. So we could get just basic shark, but in this case, I'm suggesting water steel type, because yes, let's fully embrace the hammer in its namesake, and make the hammer in Hammerhead a literal steel hammer that it possibly uses to break rocks to get at its food source, or maybe it breaks coral, or maybe it uses it to break through terrain to get to its prey when it's on the hunt. You know, there's some ideas in that. It's another typing that's been done before, but it's a typing that makes sense given the wordplay of hammerhead shark. Because Japan loves its puns, Pokemon especially loves its wordplay, so I think a hammerhead shark would be pretty neat. And personally speaking, hammerhead sharks are my personal favorite shark, simply because they're the most fascinating from their design. Like, how on earth did they evolve heads like this? It just fascinates me. And as I was looking up pictures of hammerhead sharks for this video, I realized from an underview angle, they're often kind of weirdly cute. Like, ugly cute. It's quite strange, but yeah. I could see a first stage hammerhead shark Pokemon looking absolutely adorable, and then eventually becoming kinda badass. At least I would hope so. The most I could ask for is that it's more than just a hammerhead shark's head swimming around like Sharpedo, because, man, does that disappoint me so much. Fix it with a hammerhead shark Pokemon, because among all the shark designs out there, I think this one is by far the most interesting. But it's not the only aquatic animal that is overdue to exist within the Pokemon universe. Number 8. A dolphin. These sex-crazed perverts that love getting high off pufferfish are something that I know for years people have been begging, asking, where are they in the Pokemon universe? Why is Lantern the closest we have to a dolphin Pokemon? And it's not even actually based on a dolphin, it just looks kind of like one. Dolphins would be super cute, super adorable, and I think they would make perfect sense as a water psychic type, since dolphins in particular are very intelligent animals, and whales in general with their use of sonar can kind of be associated with psychic type, I guess. But I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention stuff like Echo the Dolphin, which honestly speaking is kind of subconsciously manipulating me into thinking the whole psychic typing would make sense, since in that game Echo the Dolphin did basically have psychic powers, essentially, sort of. Echo the Dolphin's a weird game, but either way, similar to sharks, I don't know what they could really do to make the design stand out beyond being more than just, well, the animal with anime eyes. But it'd be cute, and I think it's long overdue. Though, if I had to pick, it wouldn't be my personal aquatic choice. So, sitting tied with dolphins is my personal pick, orca whales. Because orca whales are cooler looking, they're more interesting, and generally speaking, due to the intimidation factor of its actual real-life physical appearance, I think it being water dark type would make the most sense. And similar to Absol, the dark typing could be attributed to the misunderstanding or misnomers with its namesake, in particular being known as a killer whale, despite the fact that they're not actual killers. It's just that unlike many other whales, which eat via filtering food through their baleen, orcas in particular are apex predators, which means that they're at the top of their food chain with no other animals, except us humans, who hunt them. So with that said, orca whales have a diet that can consist of squid, birds, octopuses, sea turtles, sharks, rays, and even marine mammals like seals. So there is a reason why they get the killer name, but it's not necessarily because they're evil, it's just that they're at the top of the food chain. And again, I think that idea would really work nicely, and frankly, I think it would be a lot more interesting than a dolphin, because Arceus knows that we're overdue for some kind of gigantic aquatic Pokemon that's also a pretty mean creature in the sea, and while we could be here talking about great white shark Pokemon, I think Hammerhead is way more interesting. So let's have that orca already. Number 7. A suit of armor. Now we've seen plenty of Pokemon, in particular ghost Pokemon, who are just living objects. We've had living candles, living swords, and even living coffins. So why not a suit of armor? In this case, it would most obviously be a ghost steel type, and in concept, in my mind at least, it would work quite similar to, well, Alphonse from Fullmetal Alchemist, as you're seeing here with the illustration I'm using as an example. Though, I could see it working out as a 3-stage evolution. The first stage could start out as, say, just the gauntlet of a suit of armor, maybe with a little hole in the top of the palm where a glowing eye could be popping out, and that's how it looks around and sees. And then it could just be creepily crawling around with its fingers using them as its legs. From there, some of the other evolutions like Metang and Magneton, perhaps the Pokemon could run to another copy of itself, in this case 2 gauntlets, coming together to possess a torso, and thus becoming a Pokemon that is sort of like a headless knight, though potentially minus the legs, with maybe a little wisp coming out the bottom side of the torso armor, and maybe some resemblance of a ghostly head peeking out through the neck of the armor. And then of course, the final stage of evolution, whether through trade or some other means, it gets the legs, it gets the head, and it becomes a living suit of armor. Whether it's a knight, a samurai, or maybe even regional variants. They could do different versions depending on what part of the world you're playing in, and then you could just trade these various suits of armor around with it all ultimately being the same Pokemon, or they could just give us a conventional knight. There isn't that much else I can add to it. I would imagine it would have high defense, maybe high attack, and it would probably be quite slow because it's a lumbering suit of armor. But with that said, I think it would be pretty cool, and I would pretty much just leave the rest of Game Freak. Though I think they would be missing a huge opportunity if they didn't make the first stage just be a creepy hand crawling around. Number 6. Rotom TV. Now at this point, I'm officially lying to all of you because this is the one exception to the rule where I actually do have illustrations for this, and it's a moment where I'm personally saying, please, Game Freak. I know it's a coincidence that a lot of ideas I've incorporated into the Silver League comic are ideas that you would later use yourself, and I know you're not stalking me, I'm pretty sure you aren't, but please, by all means, take this idea. Please! The idea of Rotom getting multiple forms based on its ability to possess objects was ingenious! Just like the Eevee evolutions, you've potentially allowed yourself to give Rotom up to 17 brand new forms. And I think it's an idea that needs to be expanded on. And really, with Generation 7, it seems like you're open to that idea since you kind of turned the idea of Rotom TV into the Rotom Dex. It's just unfortunate that at no point in Generation 7 can we actually battle with the Rotom Dex. And that would have been quite funny. Rotom Dex is effectively possessing something that would count as a TV screen, but for me personally, I think Rotom TV has to happen, and if it does happen, it needs to be electric bug type. Why bug, you might be asking? Because the unique move it has when it's possessing a TV is Signal Beam. Why Signal Beam? Because it transmits TV signals! Ha 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 ha. I'll see myself out now. See ya, guys! No, it's not the end of the video, I swear, I swear! But seriously, make it happen. Imagine a Rotom possessing an old CRT and just floating around as a big orange box with a big goofy smile on its face. I would love that! I think it would be neat. Do it already! Number 5. A Canadian Goose. No joke, the Canadian goose is probably my favorite bird. Yeah, I'm Canadian, but despite how stereotypical that might sound, I actually really like watching Canadian geese just do their own thing. It's honestly quite soothing. And I know there's countless stories of people running into Canadian geese that have been jerks, and trust me, they can be quite defensive of their young. Not to mention, in Canada, they can actually hold traffic when they're crossing the road. Literally, they will stop traffic when they're crossing the road, even though they could just fly to the other side of the road. So there is a lot of bias when it comes to my love of the Canadian goose. And look at what a goofball it is here. Just, man, I love these things. I just really do. Though with all of that said, no, they wouldn't be flying ice type. 1, that typing would be terrible. And 2, Canadian geese still migrate in the winter. Yes? Ha ha. Canadians live in igloos. And trust me, our winters can be quite cold and quite frigid, and there can be plenty of snow. But generally speaking, Canadian geese don't stick around for that. So no, if anything, they would be either flying water or normal flying. I'm more inclined to lean towards normal flying, though the more I think about it, water flying would make sense since they have webbed feet for swimming, but that would only make the comparisons to Swanna even more apparent, and Swanna already breaks my heart a lot, and unfortunately, I'm not holding my breath for a Canadian goose Pokemon to be any good either, because either way, you're looking at normal flying type or flying water, and chances are its stat distribution and abilities wouldn't fare too much. At best, once again, it might have Intimidate just for the fact that, well, these things can be quite imposing if you tick them off or you get near their kids. But I don't know what else they could really do to make a Canadian goose interesting or good. It would, realistically speaking, be the regional bird that would probably fall somewhere along the lines of an unpheasant, where yes, it is a bird common to that region of the world which you're basing it on. In this case, the only time we would ever see a Canadian goose Pokemon would be if the region was based on Canada, and chances are it wouldn't be one of the good ones. If they made a Canadian goose Pokemon as good as Staraptor, I would be eternally grateful, but I'm not holding my breath. Look at this thing and tell me this thing can take on a Charizard. Yeah, I would love it. I would love it to death, but I'd be the first to acknowledge it would probably suck. But I still want it. And it's the silliest thing ever, but man, sometimes you just gotta follow your heart. Number 4. A Komodo Dragon. Among modern day lizards, these are easily my favorite. Because oh my god, Komodo Dragons are cool. Yes, there admittedly isn't that much to their design aesthetically on the surface, but it's just the size of these things, and the fact that they're completely poison to the touch, making it an obvious dragon poison typing, but they're just so cool, they're vicious. I mean, look at what it's doing to this animal right here. They're simply a really cool animal that, honest to goodness, does feel like a real-life dragon in our world. And it's something that's just begging to be a Pokemon, because again, we call these things Komodo Dragons. It's a real-life dragon, at least as far as what we've called it. Sure, it's not the conventional winged dragon that we all love, and I'm sure in Pokemon they could slap little tiny wings on it, but no. I think a Komodo dragon Pokemon would have to have no wings. Now I am debating whether or not I would want to remain a quadruped, or maybe be semi-bipedal, sort of like a Groudon. But then again, I think we'd be really losing something if a Komodo dragon Pokemon didn't have a Komodo dragon's actual kind of goofy walk cycle. So maybe I would want it to be a quadruped dragon Pokemon. Though Salamence design-wise would give it a good run for its money as far as standing out, but again, it's poison to the touch, and I think it would really stand out as just a gigantically powerful Pokemon that isn't necessarily legend, could be a pseudo-legend very easily, especially due to its rarity in real life. And despite the fact that even its typing wouldn't be unique, since Dragalge has already given us a Dragon Poison type, I think there's something here. I think Game Freak could do something really cool with their Komodo Dragon as an idea to make it a pretty interesting physical-based Dragon Poison type. I think that could work, and I would love to see that happen. Number 3. An Ankylosaurus fossil. So if the Komodo Dragon is my favorite currently still existing lizard, the Ankylosaurus is without a doubt my favorite dinosaur. Oh my god, look at this thing. Look at how awesome, armor-plated, spiky, and just badass this dinosaur is. It is so freaking cool, and I want a Pokemon of it so badly. Every time a new Jurassic Park, or Jurassic World movie I guess at this point, comes out, there's almost always an Ankylosaurus figure, and every time I'm tempted to buy it, but I don't because, well, it doesn't really have that much posability, and I need posability. But all of that said, I love Ankylosauruses, or Ankylodons, or whatever you want to call it. I think, and I'm going off the Wikipedia for this, that the proper term is Ankylosaurus. And even then, I may not be pronouncing the name right, because, it's so freaking cool looking! And I think it would be so cool to have this just armored tank of a Pokemon, with a giant wrecking ball tail just with massive attack, massive defense. Slow as all heck, but it doesn't have to worry about it, because it can take a hit, and it can hit back, and shatter our Tyrannosaurus Rex's ribcage with one swing of its club tail. It would be so freaking cool! The only problem is typing and comparison to other fossils. Because realistically speaking, the idea of it having a wrecking ball tail and armor plating and just being this armored tank of just durability and power, Rock Steel would be the most obvious typing you could give this thing. And one that's been done by Bastiodon, which Bastiodon is already kind of hogging the potential of a Triceratops Pokemon, but also it's hogging a typing, which, to be fair, Kabutops and Omastar both share a typing, but the other issue is, Rock Steel isn't really that good of a typing. Stab-wise, it'd be amazing for an Ankylosaur with a high attack stat, but the problem is, any potential good defensive stats it could have would be wasted by the fact that a fighting move or a ground move would absolutely tear it apart. And unfortunately, those are almost always going to be common moves within Pokemon. It just wouldn't be a good time for the Rock Steel type Ankylosaur Pokemon. However, I do think there would be a bit of fairness in potentially making it Rock Ground, which is a typing that hasn't been done yet for fossils, and I don't really know how you could stretch that into being a ground type, other than maybe comparisons to Rhyhorn and Rhydon, who are also Rock Ground type. But then again, it would still have a plethora of absolutely terrible weaknesses, and any Pokemon who is super slow, with a ton of weaknesses, generally don't fare out so well. But then again, similar to the Canadian Goose, I still want it, but I admit, it would be a Pokemon that would potentially break my heart simply because the typing would hold it back. Being slow and Rock type is generally never a good combination, but honestly speaking, I can't see a hypothetical Pokemon like this ever getting Rock Polish, since the idea was the Ankylosaurus was slow. Oh, and maybe give the Ankylosaurus Pokemon something like Filter, anything to reduce the weaknesses. At least then you can maybe justify Rock Steel or Rock Ground. Either way, it would need something within its game design to embrace the idea that it was designed to take hits, and the idea that its armor plating was designed to deflect predators. I think they could do it, but I wouldn't be holding my breath. And even then, it wouldn't stop me from loving it if an Ankylosaurus Pokemon happened. Number 2. A chili pepper. Yes, a chili pepper. And not the weak ones you get at Subway either. I'm talking ghost chili peppers. These wrinkly, vibrant red things that you have to sign waiver forms for in order for people to legally let you eat one. People have always speculated and desired seeing a grass fire type Pokemon simply because of the nature of two contrasting types being smushed together. The most obvious thing a lot of people have pointed to is a burning bush, which would never happen because of, well, religious connotations, but then again, has that really stopped other Pokemon with albeit really subtle religious connotations associated to them? No, but nevertheless, a burning bush is a little too simplistic, a little bit obvious, and it lacks that punny nature that would work oh so well with Pokemon. A chili pepper though, that has heat, that has fire. When you bite into one of those, fire is coming out of your mouth if you're in an anime, and that would make so much sense for a Pokemon. Put some evil eyes on it, give it a big smirk, sure, basically make it Electrode, but it would work. I personally would love it. Maybe the first stage of its evolution could be the weak chili peppers, and then it gets bigger, more wrinkly, more meaner looking, and it wants to spit flaming hot seeds in your mouth so that way you'll just be in spicy hell? I think that would work. It could have its own exclusive move, similar to Bullet Seed, where it's a multi-hit seed move, but as a result, maybe say if it lands a critical hit, it burns the opponent super hard because they've just ingested a ghost chili pepper seed and they're feeling the burn. I think that would be quite hilarious. It would be very on topic for Pokemon, and it would give us the grass fire type we've always wanted. I think it's the most obvious idea they could go for that's not just a burning bush. It's punny, it's silly, it would have a dumb face on it, and I guarantee you, if it had the right stats, people would play it. The only reason why it beat out the Ankylosaurus as far as its placement on the list goes is because I could actually see this happening as a Pokemon, where the Ankylosaurus is admittedly a lot of fan service towards myself. So while the chili pepper I admit is the most practical idea that I think could actually happen in Pokemon, my number one is complete personal bias, and I think we should get to that right about now. And the number one thing that I wish would be made into a Pokemon is a Scimitar Oryx. A question we're most often asked when we're in grade school is what our favorite animal is. Back then, it wasn't this answer, but if you ask me that question nowadays, and for the past, God, I think like 15 years now, I would have said my favorite animal was the Scimitar Oryx, because it's just a really cool and fascinating animal to me for some reason. The Scimitar Oryx is an antelope who can actually fight off a lion. It's able to whip its neck around and use its horns as literally scimitars practically to pierce lions and other predators, and basically that was its defense mechanism, and that's really cool. That's the thing that really made me love the animal. It was just very fascinating to learn about a herbivore that could actually fend off its predators, and do so successfully in ways that weren't just running away and hoping that it's not the one that got picked off from the herd. Its colors and fur patterns also sort of align with what I generally like. If you look at a Silver August design and then you look at a Scimitar Oryx, you can kind of see the similarities, though that was completely coincidental, I swear. If I were to try and turn this into a Pokemon though, I would play up the scimitars. I would literally take the horns on its head and pretty much replace them with, well, scimitars. Pretty much give it bladed horns that could actually slice and dice, even though Oryxes did the opposite, where their horns were used for piercing. So the scimitar namesake was kind of odd in that regard. But regardless of that, the inclusion of the sword motif to this animal would give it, in my personal opinion, an obvious normal steel typing. Though I do suppose a Pokemon like Marowak can be ground type, ground steel is also plausible, but honestly I'm leaning in towards normal steel, which in that case is also not a very good typing. Because sadly you look at the Scimitar Oryx, and you know that this thing would probably be really fast, probably have high attack, and it would probably have really poor defense. Kind of playing up how it has to use its offensive tools in nature to fend off its predators. And ironically enough, it means that Pokemon like Pyroar, a lion who would prey on a Scimitar Oryx, could actually make short work of it, even despite its terrible and depressing attack stat. But yeah, it's my favorite animal, it's one I'll always be dreaming of having a Pokemon of. The closest I have is Cobalion, and even though his design is similar to what I'm looking for, Cobalion is based on a completely different creature. So that does kind of lower my chances of a Scimitar Oryx Pokemon ever existing, but I'm still gonna dream. I still love this thing, and upon doing a bit of research for this video, I've had to come to the very depressing realization that the Scimitar Oryx, at least as of when I checked, is now classified as extinct in the wild. They still live on in captivity, but that was really, really unfortunate to hear about. Because yeah, I love these things. I really do. And I would hate to see it become another case of Decidui, where it's based on a species of animal that's now extinct. And Arceus knows I don't want the Scimitar Orcs to be Steel Ghost type in morbid reference to the fact that it may one day become extinct. But hey, if that happens, at least it's sort of a better typing. But yeah, I don't know. It's my favorite animal, and a lot of the animals that actually made a spot on this list are my favorite animals in their own respective categories, and we don't have Pokemon for them yet. So if Gen 8 or other gens in the future give us these Pokemon, you know I'm going to be a happy camper. But then again, I always dreamed of a fire-type lion, and I got that, and then my heart sank. But then Solgaleo came around and changed all of that, with a lion that embodied the sun. So you know what? Even if they botch it the first time, there's always second chances. So I'll have that to look forward to, and when the new generation gets revealed and we have new Pokemon to look forward to, you guys will know exactly which Pokemon I have my fingers crossed will eventually happen. I really do hope that some of these animals could be turned into Pokemon, and all I can do is wish and hope they come true. Oh, what the? Hey, what's this thing? Don't need it. And that was my list of the top 10 things that I wish for Pokemon, and I thank you all for watching. Now I have no doubt that every single one of you have your own personal desires for things you wish for Pokemon, and I more than look forward to seeing what the comments are like on this video, because I'm sure there's some pretty interesting things that I've never considered. But if you want to support more videos like this, please consider supporting my Patreon, since every dollar goes a long way to making things like this possible. But with all of that said, I'm Silver August, and I'll see you all next time.